going to start by presenting the current generative approach to syntactic variation and change, and then I'm going to discuss a case study where I applied this approach. And the case study is a study of change happening right now, actually, and it's ongoing work that I'm doing on the syntax of kinship nouns in American Norwegian as compared to European Norwegian. The generative approach that I'm going to talk about can be referred to as neo-emergentist, and this entails an emergentist view of parameters, and I'm going to come back to what exactly that means. The model has, to a large extent, been developed in the RECOS project, which was an ERC project based out of the University of Cambridge. Unfortunately, it's just finished now, and I was a postdoc there for some parts of the project. And much of what I'm going to say just about the framework will be based on the works that are cited here. And I would like to just recommend these works for further reading and more elaborate discussions. So, I mean, I obviously can't say everything. There are many things that I'm not going to have the time to talk about today. But I will try to give you a very brief presentation. So, a useful starting point here is what we can call the traditional generative view of language acquisition, or how language arises in the individual. There are two ingredients here. There's UG, universal grammar, and primary linguistic data, or PLD, which is the input data that the child will be exposed to. Those two combined will give you the I language, which is the language of an individual speaker. It's a mental object, so this kind of picks up on Lauren's talk, actually. In this model, we have title-rich UG, which restricts the property of a possible I language. UG consists of general principles, which will be the same in all languages. Then there are also parameters, which are you can think of them as, there's this switchboard metaphor that's been quite common at this stage, which is basically that we can think of parameters as pre-specified switches whose values are set on the basis of experience. And these pre-specified switches enable children to, acquire language very quickly and very easily, despite the fact that the input that they get is actually quite limited. An example of a parameter in this sense is the head directionality parameter, which is a parameter that decides whether a head, for example a verb, will take its complement to the left or to the right. So you can have a structure like John saw Bill, which we have in English. This is the head initial structure where we have the head, then the complement following. Or John Bill saw. This is the head final structure where the head follows the complement, like Japanese will do this. This parameter would then also be valid for other types of head and verbs, like adpositions. So if you have a language with which is head initial, you will tend to have prepositions, whereas if you have head final language, you will tend to have postpositions where they follow the complement. Right. Now, more recently, especially in connection with what's often referred to as the minimalist program, there have been some quite important developments. One of these developments is represented in Chomsky's 2005 paper, 3 Factors in Language Design. So now there are not only 2 ingredients, there's still genetic endowment, or UG, there's still experience and primary linguistic data, but there are also the so-called third factors, which are principles not specific to the faculty of language. They are principles of data analysis, and there can also be principles of structural architecture or efficient computation. And that gives us a bit of a different representation, schematic representation of how our languages arise. So we have UG, we have PLD, then we have the third factors, and that together will give us the I language. Another important point concerns the locus of parametric variation. And a leading idea, an important idea, is the so-called Fourier-Chomsky conjecture, according to which all parameters of variation can be attributed to differences in the features of items in the lexicon. So parametric variation is found actually in the lexicon. That means that parameters must be formulated in terms of formal features on lexical items, and such formal features can be what we call phi features, for example. That's person, number, and gender features, which can in turn trigger agreement. Categorical features, case features, and also movement triggering features. Movement triggering features play, or they are a key ingredient in many accounts, or at least in some accounts, of word order. For example, head directionality. One influential proposal is that Dr Kinn, 94, according to which all languages are underlyingly like this, head initial, but there can be a movement triggering feature which triggers movement of the complement to the position before head. Right. So some of the most important differences between the traditional generative view and more recent accounts is that UG is less richly specified in the more recent approaches. At least in some works, UG only provides a format for formal features and two primary syntactic relations. Also, as I mentioned, third factors that are not specific to the faculty of language are now explicitly incorporated into the model. And importantly, parameters, that's the word missing here, but parameters are not given by UG. Right, so how then are parameters set? Parameters are set in interaction between all of the three factors of language design. And we're going to have a closer look at the third factors that I mentioned. Now, as you recall, the third factors are not principles that are not specific to the faculty of language. And learning more about these factors is actually very high on the agenda right now. A third factor principle that has been proposed by Teresa Liebauer in the 2017 paper and other places as well is called maximize minimal means, or MMN. This is a general cognitive bias which affects language acquisition, and it's possible to identify at least two interacting language-specific manifestations of this third factor principle. One is feature economy, which is a bias for children when they learn language to postulate as few formal features as possible to account for the input. So this is, well, an economy constraint, basically. Then there's input generalization, which basically is a bias towards, once you've identified a formal feature, you will try to apply it as widely as possible. So this can give the effects of analogy. Together, feature economy and input generalization give rise to a learning path for the acquisition of formal features. And that's rendered in example 6. You can think of this as a decision tree for a child that's acquiring language. Now, if a child finds no evidence of any formal feature at all, then actually we're up here, nothing happens. Or actually, this question doesn't even arise. However, if a child finds some evidence of a formal feature, then the next question is, does it apply to all heads or relevant heads? This would then be consistent with input generalization. This would be consistent with feature economy. This would be a non-option. This would be an all option. Now, if it's clear that there is a formal feature, it does not apply to all heads, then the next question is, which subset of heads? Where? What's the distribution of this feature? And here, to find sort of the right subset of features, we can actually postulate a new formal feature to find the right delimitation. For example, if we're talking about head finality, if we, for example, have a language in which only, say, focused objects will appear before the verb, then you can postulate a feature for focus to capture this distribution. Now recall that all parameters are defined in terms of formal features. It's important to keep in mind here that parameters are not pre-specified switches, but they emerge by this learning path through interaction of all of these three factors. Right. You can characterize parameters according to size. Some will be relevant to a large number of heads, while others will only apply to a small subset of heads. And we can then place them in a hierarchy. This is merely a description, really, but we can have macro parameters, like, for example, in a language that is either consistently head final or head initial, that would be up here. Like Japanese would be consistently head final, for example. Then we have various options where we have more mixed patterns, and we can go like mesoparameters, microparameters, and then down here we have nanoparameters, which will only apply to a very small number of lexical items. For example, Norwegian, my native language, could be an example of this. It's generally head initial, but you have a few prepositions that can take their complement before, or that can be head final. So you can say, for example, around the world, you can say rundt verden or verden rundt. Right. Okay. A few words about diachronic change. Diachronic change involves a new setting of parameters in the individual. Now, actually, all language acquisition involves setting new parameters, but what we're talking about here is a setting of parameters that will differ from that of the previous generation. The model that I've sketched here makes some diachronic relations. First of all, macro parametric choices, the ones high up in the hierarchy, will tend to be more stable. That's because it's harder to disrupt the primary linguistic data, and they also require fewer formal features. Nano parameters, on the other hand, are more prone to change, and they can only persist if they are sufficiently frequent in the PLD, otherwise they will be lost as a form of analogical leveling. Now, in the remainder of this talk, I'm going to discuss a case study of a nanoparameter. We're going to turn to kinship nouns in American and European Norwegian. These are speakers of American Norwegian. What is American Norwegian? Well, it's a heritage language. It's spoken by people in America. They're third to fifth generation immigrants, and they're bilinguals. They have acquired Norwegian at home as young children, and then they've acquired English at school. So English is their L2 in terms of the order of acquisition, but it's still their dominant language as adults. Many of these speakers have had very, very little contact with Norway, so this language has sort of developed in isolation. Most of the speakers are quite old, they're in their 80s. I've interviewed a woman who was 102. But actually there was some breaking news last week where one of my colleagues found a speaker on the age of 16, so that's quite fantastic, so I'm very intrigued about that, so we'll see how it turns out. The data that I'm going to present, or the data that I'm basing this on, are taken from a book called CANS, and there's also some more speech data that haven't been transcribed yet. Now, to understand diachronic development in American Norwegian, ideally we would want to compare it to the language of the first immigrants, the first people who left. That was in the 19th century. Unfortunately, our access to that language is very limited, so what I'm doing in practice is that I'm comparing American Norwegian to European Norwegian, which is European as spoken in Norway. But I've done some measures to try to approximate this ideal baseline in terms of geography, so I'm focusing on data from the areas where the first immigrants left from, and also age, so I'm focusing on older speakers. Now, kinship nouns. European Norwegian has a relatively rich system of what we call split possession. And what that means is that there are certain syntactic constructions that are reserved for certain kinship nouns. These kinship nouns are highly frequent and they denote close family relations. I'm going to focus on two special constructions, one with a bare noun plus post-possessive pronoun, one with a bare noun and a possessive PP, prepositional phrase. So you can say in European Norwegian, far min, far mai, far til mani, father to marry. But you cannot say bil min or bil to marry. What's special about these constructions is that with other nouns that are not this little subclass of kinship nouns, you need a definiteness suffix. You would have to say bilen to marry bilen mi. So that's how they're special. And like I said, it's only at least I only found I found these nouns in the constructions. This is based on literature describing these constructions and also a subcorpus of the Nordic dialect corpus. So there are nouns like mother, father, sister, daughter, various words for aunt, man, or husband, parents. A few notes are in place. Note that these constructions are generally optional, it seems. You don't have to use them, but they are an option for these nouns. There's quite a lot of inter-speaker variation. Marikule notes that not all speakers use it, and it seems more common among older speakers and speakers from a rural background. Some speakers only allow it with mother and father. Yes, and also it appears to have a somewhat wider distribution in actual speech data than what the grammatical descriptions say. So what about American Norwegian? Do these speakers have a split possession pattern? And in short, yes, they do. Special constructions with their kinship nouns are widely used. So we find things like bestefar, til mor mi. This is actually both of the constructions combined. And it's also worth noting that while there's some inter-speaker variation, and there seems to be some optionality, but the nouns mor, mother, brother and father are overwhelmingly used with these special patterns. So apparently there's less variation actually than in the European Norwegian. Some speakers also use these constructions with nouns that I've not observed being used like this in European Norwegian. So they use them with less core kinship nouns like cousin or second cousin. And nouns denoting female spouses as well. I've not seen this in European Norwegian. So there are things like kusine min, tremenning til kona, second cousin to wife. Wife, mine. This has been observed before for construction 1 by Westergaard and Andersen. Also, we find it with loan words in a few cases. Nephew, me, auntie, me. My overall impression is that split possession is clearly present in American Norwegian, and it's actually an even more pervasive property of American Norwegian than European Norwegian, because we've seen that it's more extensively used with some nouns. They use it with a wider range of kinship nouns, and they seem to use it, at least some speakers. Well, this only applies to some speakers, but these speakers seem to use it with loan words. Right. So now we've compared the two varieties. How can we analyze the variation and the change, or even the changes? First of all, how do we capture these bare forms of kinship nouns? The common intuition here that I'm going to adopt as well is that they don't have a definite suffix because they're somehow inherently definite. There are different ways of formalizing that. I'm not going to go into detail, so about it now. So for the present purposes, I'm just going to assume an inherent definiteness feature on these relevant nouns. Now, so in American Norwegian, as you remember, split position is clearly present and it's seemingly more pervasive. This can hardly be explained as influence from English, even though these speakers are bilingual, because English does not really have split possession to this extent. My proposal then is that in American Norwegian, inherent definiteness has been extended to new lexical items, and at least in some speakers, all kinship nouns seem to be treated on a par. So these speakers seem to treat kinship nouns as a featurally distinguished class. So if you remember this model now, we can picture this development like this. So the child recognizes that there is inherent definiteness. There's an inherent definiteness feature. Is it on all heads? No, clearly not. Then which subset of heads is relevant? Well, kinship seems to be relevant on kinship nouns, and then you postulate a formal feature encoding kinship terms. How does this happen in more detail? Well, American Norwegian is a heritage language, so there's something going on about the input here. It's more reduced and different from the input that the European Norwegian speakers get. And I think it seems reasonable to assume, well, we know that kinship terms are frequent, and we also know that the heritage languages are generally home languages. So I think the fact that they're frequent would probably be an even stronger tendency in this type of variety. Then there's the third factor, maximal minimum means, and input generalization. Maximize already postulated features, so you've already postulated the inherent definiteness feature, and this principle will then give you a motivation to extend it. So there's interaction between these two factors. There's one caveat here that I should mention, and this is brought about by this baseline problem that I mentioned in the introduction. We have very limited access to the language of the first emigrants that left. Could it be that what we see is not really an extension but a relic? So could it be that all kinship nouns were treated on a par already at this stage? I have to admit it's very difficult to exclude that possibility completely. On the other hand, at least currently I'm inclined to go with an extension account for this because, well, the baseline data does include data from elderly speakers in Norway and elderly material. Then there is actually some data from first generation speakers which was collected by Kari Kinn. It's not very much, but at least I did not find any extended patterns in these speakers. I did, however, find at least one example from a second generation speaker in this dataset. And also, bare forms with loan words could possibly be taken to indicate productivity. Okay. What about European Norwegian? If there's time, I would like to just give 2 brief remarks on that. As you remember, there's some inter-speaker variation here. Not all speakers use the special constructions, and there's variation with respect to which nouns they use. Some speakers only use it with mother and father. I think it's possible that we have a nano parametric change going on here, whereby inherent definiteness is restricted item by item. This would be motivated by, again, maximum means, but this time feature economy. So postulate as few formal features as you can. And then there's the frequencies again. Inherent definiteness seems to be best retained in kinship nouns that are probably the most frequent ones, like mother and father. Okay, so just to sum up, I've given a very brief introduction to a neo-emergentist approach to syntactic variation and change. We looked at syntax, the syntax of kinship nouns in American Norwegian versus European Norwegian, and I've showed how the model that I introduced can explicitly take into account all 3 factors in language design. Thank you.